Hi there, everyone. My name is Jeff DeRoche, and I'm a clinical social worker at Child Mind Institute. We're a national nonprofit that supports children and families with gold standard mental health care, advice, and resources, all online and accessible to everyone. You can learn more about the resources we have available for families during the coronavirus crisis, including telehealth evaluations and treatment, by visiting childmind.org/coronavirus. Today, I'd like to talk about acceptance, validation, and change during the coronavirus. And I'd also like to answer your questions about that and about anything else you're wondering about. So go ahead and post your questions in the feed. We'll also post some links and helpful resources on childmind.org and the details about the next Facebook Live. Remember, we're here every day at 10 a.m. and 4:30 p.m., and we look forward to your questions daily. I thought that by opening this, what I would do, and a lot of what I'm going to be saying today comes from one type of psychotherapy called dialectical behavior therapy. And a lot of the sort of skills and the ideas that I'll be presenting today come from my training in that. Also, some of the ideas that I'll be talking about today will come from a different kind of psychotherapy called acceptance and commitment therapy. I really say these things to give credit where credit is due. None of these are my brilliant ideas that I came up with on my own. There's stuff that we work closely with and we teach, and we work with people at Child Mind Institute. So in DBT, or dialectical behavior therapy, when we teach radical acceptance, which is a concept I'm going to talk about right now, we typically start with a story from our own personal experience with radical acceptance. And I was thinking about how I wanted to start this the other night, and it occurred to me that it would be interesting to talk about something that happened when I was in my early 20s. When I was in my early 20s, I had a really good friend who had a terminal illness, and he was in the last stages of a terminal illness, and he had gotten very sick, and he had chosen to go home to a different state and to live with his family of origin in order to finish off his life there. This was really hard for me. I was 20-something. I never really sort of coped with that specific type of loss of a friend, and I really didn't know what to do at the time. It felt confusing. And I remember the last night that he and I were going to hang out together. We got together, and I think for me, what I really wanted to do was fight. I wanted to struggle. I wanted to make sure everything went right. I wanted to make sure I wanted us to say everything we needed to say. It's as though I had so much anxiety about not having this friend in my life anymore that I was sort of trampling on the entire experience that we were having. And I remember he did this really cool thing, which was, it was snowing outside at the time, and he just said, you know what, let's go outside. And we went outside, and he did this thing that at the time I thought was crazy. He said, let's get down on the ground and we're going to make snow angels. And that is literally what we did. We got down on the ground and we made snow angels. The amazing thing about that moment for me is that it was joyful. The amazing thing about that moment for me was I felt exuberant, I felt awake, I felt alive, and I felt so happy to be there with my good friend. Now, my friend had accepted the terminal nature of his illness. And what my friend did in that moment was he brought us both radically into the present. He brought us both radically into our experience of what was going on in real time, right there together. And that is what amazes me about radical acceptance, is that even if we don't fight what is happening to us, we are often surprised by what it is that we can find in any different experience. So now let me just tell you what radical acceptance is. Radical acceptance is essentially accepting what we can't change. So there are lots of things that we can change, and there are lots of things that we can't. We cannot change what is happening to us in a moment. I mean, there are certain things in a moment that we can change, and when we can change them, I encourage you to change them if you'd like to see them change. But there will always be specifics about a moment that cannot be changed. And when they can't be changed, this is when radical acceptance becomes the most powerful tool we have. In dialectical behavior therapy, we learned an idea that's actually from Buddhism. And the idea is that pain plus non-acceptance equals suffering. So I just repeat that. Pain plus non-acceptance equals suffering. So pain is ordinary pain. We're all feeling it. We're feeling anxiety, we're feeling fear, we're feeling frustration, we're having worry. We're sitting in all of this together, right? And then there's non-acceptance. There's everything that we add on to that pain, which is like anxious projections about what may be happening in the future, connecting things that are happening to us now to horrible things that happened in our past, not accepting the basic feelings, the way that we're responding, either by judging or trying to avoid our feelings, and dwelling on how we're feeling or over-identifying with how we're feeling. Those things I want to categorize in that second piece. So there's pain plus non-acceptance. What I'm describing there is non-acceptance. And when we add that on to ordinary pain, what we get is suffering. So today what I'm talking about, what I'd like to talk about, is trying to remove some of those add-ons, trying to figure out how it is that we can sit squarely, mindfully in the present, how we can validate the truth of our feelings, our emotional expression, our emotional responses to what's happening, and how we cannot add on to that to the extent that it's possible, so that we don't bring ourselves additional suffering beyond the ordinary pain that we're experiencing. I hope that's helpful as an introduction. I want to start now by taking questions. And the first question I have is as follows. This situation is causing me so much anxiety. How can I learn to accept things for what they are and stop trying to skip ahead to when this is all over? So that's a really great question. And that's actually what an appropriate question, because it's actually what I was just talking about. It's like the answer I just gave is in your question. Here's what I want to say to you. You're feeling so much anxiety. There is fear, right? You're having fear, and that's really important. And then you're having anxiety. My guess is that a lot of the anxiety that you're having involves a lot of what you're thinking about, a lot of desire to not feel what you're feeling, what we call avoidance. So there may be things that you're doing to avoid sort of being aware in a mindful way, observing what you feel, just being present to it and letting it go. This is really normal. This is actually a lot of data which show that this is what keeps an anxiety disorder being an anxiety disorder, right? Is sort of experiential avoidance. When we treat anxiety by exposure. Now, I'm not asking you to go and do some intense exposure exercise. What I'm asking you to do right now, I think, is probably more simple. And here's what I would suggest. I would suggest that the first thing you do when you're feeling that anxiety is to stop. There's a DBT skill called stop, and it really is stop. Take a step back, observe, and proceed mindfully. The way I would encourage you to do that is to notice that you're feeling fear and make a choice in that moment not to fight the fear by trying to avoid or escape it. What I like to do in moments of fear is I like to do what's called paced breathing. Paced breathing means it's essentially deep breathing. Like we always encourage belly breathing. So if you're doing an inhale, you want to make sure that your belly's expanding. That's a really, really healthy way to get good full breaths. And that's a good piece of this. But the paced breathing, what that means is my paced breathing is I will breathe in to a 4 count, a nice full breath to a 4 count, and I'll breathe out to an 8 count. The reason that I do that, the reason that we do paced breathing is that when you breathe in, you're actually activating with your sympathetic nervous system. That's like the gas of your nervous system. And when you breathe out, when you exhale, you're activating your parasympathetic nervous system, which is like the brakes. That's a sort of deceleration, right? So if you imagine your car, you breathe in, you're stepping on the gas. When you step on the brakes, everything slows down a little. So when you extend the exhale, what you're doing, and what I always notice is I breathe in for 4, I'm breathing out 1, 2, 3, 4. As soon as I hit that 4, I tend to notice my body just starting to calm down. And then I go 5, 6. So whatever your count, whatever feels right, my encouragement is to stop, do some paced breathing, and ground yourself with your 5 senses. Here I'm getting into the territory of mindfulness. What we want to do is we want to use every single one of our senses to really ground ourselves and like put our roots into the present moment. What is happening in the present moment? What is coming in through your five senses? What do you see? What do you hear? What do you smell? What do you taste? What do you feel? And that includes what you're experiencing physiologically and emotionally inside of your body. What's there? What is all the information that you're experiencing? And what I want to encourage you to do is to observe all of that calmly without any judgment. And judgment is one of those add-ons I was talking about earlier. Judgment is non-acceptance. So what we're really looking at is observing all of that input, all of that data mindfully, and just letting that be what is true about the present moment. The only thing you know about the present moment is what you're experiencing with your five senses. So you've done a little bit of breathing, you've started to ground yourself, and then you're going to allow yourself to be in that present moment, and you're going to accept what's there. Here's what I would encourage you to do once you've gotten to that place and you're sort of mindfully observing. Ask yourself, what is happening right now in this room? What is the danger? What is causing harm? Where is the frustration? What is it? What is it that I notice? Is anything in this room right now unbearable? Because for me right now, I can't experience a single thing with my five senses that's unbearable. You may be experiencing something with your five senses that's uncomfortable. You may be experiencing something with your five senses that is difficult, unsettling, something that you don't want. But if you don't avoid it, what we call that is ordinary pain. And what you don't add on to ordinary pain is non-acceptance, because then that brings you to a place of suffering. So don't judge it. Don't fight with it. Don't wrestle with it. Sit there beside it. It doesn't mean you like it. It doesn't mean you accept it. It means it is what it is. And that is actually what I mean when I'm talking about acceptance. It's a really radical practice. It is not always easy, but it will prevent you from skipping ahead to when this is all over. Because skipping ahead to when this is all over is like it's an anticipatory, anxious kind of cognition that is one of those add-ons. It's one of those things that keeps us from acceptance. I hope that is helpful. I'm going to move on to the next question now. And the next question is, I feel like I'm not doing a good job at anything right now. Not as a parent, not at my job, not as a partner, not even as a person. It's like this is the test of how well you handle stress, and I'm just failing. What can I do? Oh, that's beautiful. That's a really lovely question, and thank you so much for sending it. I think I want to start here by saying, of course you feel like this. I want to start here with validation, because I'm hearing in your statement, I'm hearing a lot of shoulds in CBT and DBT and all sorts of other kinds of evidence-based practices. We talk about should statements, right? Like, I should do this. This should be this way. I should be performing at this really high level. And a joke that like a gajillion practitioners love to make, which I make very frequently in a corny way in my office, is it sounds like you're really shoulding all over yourself right now. And what I would actually like you to do is to see if you can challenge that should. Why should you be doing a great job right now as a parent? Why should you be doing a great job as a partner? Why should you be doing a great job as a person? My guess is if you're anything like me, you're tired of being indoors. Your body probably aches a little bit. You might be a little bit irritable. Your sleeping might not be awesome. I don't know about you, but I feel very frustrated a lot of the time. I feel like my patience is short. I feel like when I do my work, I'm not working up to my full capacity at all. But if I add on those shoulds, then I'm no longer in the present moment. I'm no longer in acceptance. What I'm in is acceptance plus an add-on, plus non-acceptance, and that's when I start to suffer. Now, not only am I less effective at everything, but I'm less effective, and I'm adding on to that lack of effectiveness with like self-cudgeling, right? I'm like, I'm really mad at myself for not doing well, or I'm just really bummed out at myself for not doing this well. I don't think this is a test of how well you handle stress. I know that it's like that for you, and I want to validate that it's like that for you, and I want to validate that that's really hard. I also want to say, I don't think this is a test of how you handle stress, and I certainly don't think you're failing. You're writing in, you're engaged, you're asking questions, you're trying to do better, and that is genuinely the best of all. That's the best that all of us can do. So please validate yourself. Please recognize that you're not alone. Please practice self-care. One thing I really wanted to suggest to people today is to make a self-soothe kit. A self-soothe kit is when we look at our 5 senses. So again, see, hear, taste, smell, touch. Every single one of those senses, think about something that is pleasing to each of those senses. So what do you like to smell? I love lavender. I love scented candles. I love, there's lots of stuff that I love to smell. What do you like to feel? What's sort of calming or soothing for you to feel? Does it feel nice to have something like fuzzy or soft? Is there like a hug toy? Is there a fidget toy? What is it that you like to hold in your hands? Is there just like a scarf, like a cashmere scarf or something that you love, an old blanket? What is it? What do you like to touch? What do you like to taste? Is there food that you actually like to sit and sort of savor and enjoy? What do you like to hear? Is there a lovely, gorgeous song that you like? Is there a little toy music box that you like, that the song sort of comforts you or whatever? All of your 5 senses can be represented in your self-soothe kit. Because what I want you to do is I want you to care for yourself. The other thing you can do in a self-soothe kit is you can write down or draw a picture of things that are representative. So for me, I said this the last time I did a Facebook Live, I love to take a hot shower when I'm stressed out. It just feels really good and it sort of resets me. So I could just write, take a hot shower on a little note, like index card, and put it in my self-soothe kit just to remind me what I need to do. Because what I want you to do is, the first and foremost, I want you to do self-care. I want you to make a schedule for yourself that is tolerable and manageable. It's not too hard. I want you to do what you need to do throughout the day, and I want you to do your best. And here's the biggest piece that I want to recommend to everyone, and this is where I'm really talking about acceptance. Let go of outcomes. Accept your limitations right now. Accept that you're doing your best and that your best is not perfect, and accept that the outcomes are not going to be what you might have hoped they would be. See if you can adjust your bar. See if you can adjust your bar to like something that is realistic for the situation you're in and for the experience you're having. I really hope that's helpful. I'm going to move on to the next question. Next question is, I'm terrified of what the fallout from this will be long term. My kids ask me what's going to happen, and I try to be reassuring, but I feel like my fear and worry are getting harder and harder to hide. Oof. Any tips for managing this would be great. Yeah, this is right. You're in a lot of, you have your own anxiety and you have kids who are like coming to you and they're asking you for stuff. That's a lot to hold. So again, I just want to I really want to start by validating you and to say like, your anxiety is plenty. It's plenty. And then you're managing something much more. So what I would say to you is, I said this in the last Facebook Live. I don't even usually say it, but I really want to say it again. Is put your oxygen mask on before you put it on your child. If you're feeling anxious, your child knows you're feeling anxious, right? And that's okay. Number one, you do not have to be a perfect parent, and it is okay for your child to see that you have some trepidation, some fear, some concerns about the present moment. So that's really important, and I want you to be really fair to yourself that way. Okay? And then the other thing I want you to do is I want you to start all of those practices that I just talked about. Do some self-soothing, do some breathing. There are all sorts of distress tolerance practices that you can use. And then if you're not feeling quite as distressed, there's all these emotion regulation practices that you can use. I would love to be able to share all of them. I just shared a couple, but do what it takes for you to relax. Go for a run. Intense exercise is really good for anxiety. Even like light exercise is really good for anxiety. Do something that helps you. And then tell your kids that just like for you, it is normal for them to be afraid. It is absolutely normal. It's okay for them to be afraid. Lots of people are afraid. Also, encourage their optimism. Like, here's what I mean. You can tell, it depends on how old your kid is. If your kid is like an adolescent and they're like reading the news and they're super plugged into the news and they're like, yeah, but I know exactly what's going on, and then what you want to do is you want to try to keep yourself and your kid relatively grounded. You want them to understand what's going on. And sorry, I'm playing with some technology here because I just realized that it's not working as I would like it to. Sorry. You want your kid to understand that you want to be honest with your kid, is what I was trying to say. You want to tell the kid, hey, I get this. This is really scary for you. It's also scary for me, but here's the deal. We're in it together. People are working on this, right? And here's where we go to acceptance. I want you to try to have an acceptance mindset, right? This is going to pass. I don't actually know what the outcomes will be, but it will pass. We will get through this. I don't know how it will look, but we will get through this and we will be okay. For a younger kid, I think they're going to want some reassurance, right? A younger kid is going to want to hear a couple things, I believe. One, the younger kid's probably going to need to hear that this is really scary. It's scary for mom or dad too, right? Of course, it's scary for all of us. And here's the deal. When you ask me what's going to happen, we don't have a magic ball. We're not a fortune teller. We don't actually know everything about what's going to happen in the future. But here's what we do know. We know that experts are working on the problem. Experts are trying to create a vaccine. Experts are trying to create ways to help us so that this becomes just a normal thing that is hard on our health as people are afraid it is, right? So that's one thing you can do, is just experts are working on the problem. If the kids are working about the economy, if the kids are worried about the economy, same thing. Experts are working on this problem. We're going to figure it out. We're going to get through it, right? And then what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to make sure that you're honest about it. You want to make sure that you don't overpromise. You don't say this is going to be over. You don't know when this is going to be over. So there's a way that by regulating your own anxiety, by grounding yourself in the reality of what we know, but not sort of dumping your anxiety onto your kids, that you can be really honest. And you can say, there are things I don't know. And last thing I would say is I am here for you. You and I are going to get through this together, and we're going to make the best of this time that we possibly can. And this is where, again, I'm segueing back to acceptance, right? It's back to that story of my friend who, when I was really, really scared about losing him, and I was really, really scared about the grief I was going to have to process and all of the loss that I was about to suffer, he just said, you know what? Let's make snow angels in the ground, right? Like, that's what we're doing here right now. We're not doing anything else. And the amazing thing, to go back to that story that I found, is like, you can actually have joy. You actually can, in this radical way, find pockets, find moments of joy and really great pleasure and connectedness and experience in the midst of the most horrible of circumstances. And I really want to share that message today. Saying that, I also want to share something important. This is not to minimize how challenging this is for anyone. It is not to say there is not a lot about this situation that is horrible, tragic, traumatic, deeply uncomfortable. It is to say that there are aspects of this situation that we cannot change, and what do we want to do with the time that we are in right now, the here and now? What do we want to do with it? How do we want to live it? How do we want to be in it? Last question I will answer, and I'm looking for a cue to make sure that I have time to answer one more question. I believe that, go for it. Thank you. I believe that I will answer the following. Weirdly, I'm doing well. I have a lot of privilege, a job, an au pair, and I'm not a very anxious person. I'd like to give back. What are some ways I can support friends and family who are feeling anxious and upset? Oh, that's really lovely. That's a really great intention. And like, how nice to sort of acknowledge your own privilege. That's beautiful. I'm really glad to hear it, and I'm really glad that your intention is to be helpful. Here's what I'm going to say. This is what I say to anyone who wants to be supportive. You've probably heard me say it 1,000 times today. It's a word that comes out of my mouth all the time. It is validation. Validation communicates to someone else that their experience is valid. It just means, I hear you. what you're experiencing, what you're feeling, how you're behaving, all of this makes sense. It totally makes sense given the context. I know that it is really hard. I see that it is really hard. Validation isn't saying, oh my God, I totally get it. Experience is totally mine too. It isn't rushing to problem solving and trying to help. I would definitely avoid problem solving. If you have a thought about problem solving, one thing you can say to a person is, hey, I'm trying to figure out, I really want to give you support and validation right now because I think you deserve it. I also have this thought that's more like a problem solving thing. Are you in a space where you want to hear that? Or would you really just rather me listen to you? You can always ask someone, how do you think you would like to be listened to right now? Because I really want to be here with you in the way that you deserve. But what you really want to do, in a really great form of validation, is just listening. Just listen. Because what listening communicates to someone is that they are worth being heard. So sometimes just sitting there quietly and saying, wow, I don't even really have that much to say. I don't even really know what to say, but I'm really glad to be listening to you. I'm really glad to be hearing you. I think actually what I just said was a sort of paraphrase of Brené Brown, and I don't want to be, taking other people's thoughts and ideas as my own. Bless Brené Brown in this time. I think that's actually a really lovely sentiment. I really don't know. I don't know that I have a whole lot to say or to add to what you're sharing with me, but boy, I'm really glad that you're sharing it. I'm totally here for you. I think that's the best way to help. Obviously, monetarily, give them, if you can help them with food, if you can help them with things like that, that is wonderful as well. I wish you the very best in doing that. I think I am out of time now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to thank you all again, really very much for joining me. I hope this has been helpful. And remember, we're here every day at 10 a.m. and 4:30 p.m. and we look through these questions daily. So check the post for the topic of our next live. And the Child Mind Institute is here to help with the mental health and parenting needs of during this coronavirus crisis, no matter where you are. We have resources to help, from daily tips to consultations to gold standard telehealth treatments. Go to childmind.org/coronavirus. Be safe, and thank you.